Okay, so we've talked about the arcs before, the buckyball arcs, the challenges of tribal life and process that are historically applied, and we show them graphically. There's three more here. There are more, of course. There's not so much a finite listing as much as some that are very usefully focused on and the transcendence of in order to attain species consciousness more rapidly and more joyfully, more positively, and more constructively. That said, the 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 vehicle by which humanity as a collective has arrived at this moment of technologized life, empowering technology, collective efforting and social process, that vehicle, if you imagine it as a diesel truck spewing all kinds of toxins into the air, it has brought us here. It's been necessary. It was the best we could do. It wasn't wrong. It had needed to happen. Otherwise, we couldn't be talking on Zoom today and learning to create something new that will work better. So in that process, that vehicle must be transformed into something that doesn't toxify the world, doesn't destroy the world, doesn't burn down the forest, doesn't eat up all the fish, doesn't lead to lack of resources and battle and war and terrorism, or the haves and have-nots, or significant increased suffering of our future generations, or increased suffering for the natural world. So we're redefining that vehicle. We're shifting from a diesel truck to perhaps an electric vehicle, which is still not a perfect solution, to something that may be made out of mushrooms or may be made out of cardboard or something that's completely recyclable and benign to the natural environment in the future. And we don't even know what that will be as of yet. That said, the quicker we get to that sustainable result, the better, which means subtracting our prior tendencies and replacing them with more constructive, positive, healthy, ecosystem harmonious tendencies. So these are three tendencies here that human beings have been operating from that have tended to create what we've got now, which is non-sustainable and destroying the world, the natural environment, and our futures and our children's futures. So transforming these three things in addition to the others that we listed before is very important. So if we say that there is an inertia, a momentum, a tendency to replicate the past, whatever it was, the familiar of the past, whether it's houses or cities or social process or economic tendencies or cultural tendencies or belief systems, whatever has been the familiar of the past, it has been seen as safety and as necessity and as unquestionably recognizably valid historical traditional experiences and developments and technologies and habits that no longer map effectively and efficiently and successfully and sustainably in our future. So this habit, this tendency of wanting tomorrow to be like yesterday, or wanting tomorrow to be a magnification of yesterday. So if I made a lot of money or had a lot of power, got a lot of attention, or had a lot of seeming control or safety in the past, I want more of that in the future. So I'm going to try to make more of that in the world in the future. And by doing so, I'll be damaging the environment more than I did in the past. And I won't really be safer in the future. I'll actually be less safe. I'll be accelerating the train headed for the brick wall. I'll be accelerating the Titanic towards the iceberg and not even realizing that I'm doing it or that we're doing it as a collective. So we enjoy and we find comfort in the familiar, the uncomfortable comfort zone of the familiar. And that is something we become stuck in as individuals and as a species. And it's incumbent upon us to become willing to experience the discomfort of the ending of the imagined known and the creation of some new process, collectively, socially, relationally, that actually works. The second item in this list of prior non-optimal human developmental arcs is what we would call the consensus consciousness in its entirety. The energy system of recordings of the history of humanity that we all reference consciously or subconsciously and say, that's what it means to be human. That's what it means to be a success. That's what it means to be loving, kind, or caring. Or that's what it means to be a bad person, to be wrong, or to be abandonable. All of those referenced recordings, in a way, are like the amber that we get stuck in unconsciousness, just replaying the consensus consciousness recordings, the golden oldies, if you will, that have been so nice in the past, are seemingly so necessary, and simultaneously generate dynamics of limitations of thought, limitations of decision making, limitation of perceived options, limitation of perceived opportunity that's truly successful, truly sustainable, truly eco-friendly. The consensus consciousness dynamics, what we have invested in the past, is what has generated our current world process, economically, ecologically, technologically, and socially. If we don't get a new investment paradigm that is not defined by the consensus consciousness, we will just recreate the past in the future, or we'll recreate it either faster and worse, or maybe a little slower, like dialing down our carbon footprint just a little bit. So we're moving towards the iceberg or the cliff a little slower, still headed towards the cliff, still headed towards the iceberg, patting ourselves on the back for having slowed it down. Still, the trajectory and the path resulting in hitting the iceberg or going over the cliff or hitting the brick wall. The last item of these three arcs is what might be termed the hypnotically or mesmerizingly and entraining dynamics of ego identity interaction between people, groups, tribes, and nations that we have not perceived there to be a more optimal alternative to. The more optimal alternative is conscious collaboration, transcendent of ego, transcendent of tribe, transcendent of culture, transcendent of organizational culture and the inertia of organizational or tribal or national or economic or political culture. The hypnosis of the traditional, the hypnosis of the past, the blinding obscuration of the consensus consciousness, the blinding obscuration of trying to recreate the future the way it was in the past, because we're afraid of doing something new that might not work. We're afraid of failing. We're afraid of embarrassment. We're afraid of being abandoned or ostracized socially for not doing it the way it's always been done in the past. And the way it's always been done in the past is killing our environment and the future for our children. These are profound processes. It's challenging to step out of the tarry molasses like amber concretized consensus consciousness past. It takes bravery, it takes willful intentionality, it takes a leap of faith, and it must be done consistently forevermore if we want for the whole future of humanity, if we want to be able to generate something comprehensively new, functional, workable, and ecologistically viable. The birth of humanity 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0. This moment, the WSS right now is a gestational vessel, a womb for the creation of a new consciousness from that womb to be born a new consciousness for humanity. We're not the only ones on the planet that are doing our very best in that regard. And we're playing our part. And it's necessary that we bring our parts of the puzzle together with the rest of humanity to birth this new quality of species consciousness together, collaboratively.